Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM Channel 141. This is the Inside segment. I'm Harold Fisher. Tonight, the chaos, the confusion, and the upheaval continue for federal government workers for yet another week. Who's covering President Trump? Well, the White House says it will determine which news outlets can and cannot. And hold on to your coins, exactly who is behind the call for that nationwide economic boycott this Friday. Plus, we're going to talk about some of the top Black news anchors saying goodbye. Is it by choice or by force? We're sounding off on these stories and more at the Reporters Roundtable. My guests are Keith Alexander, Pulitzer Prize-winning D.C. crime and courts reporter for the Washington Post, and Misha Green, managing editor for the Washington Informer. Thank you both for once again joining this important conversation.
It's always an honor, brother. Always an honor.
So let's first talk about what is happening with the Trump administration, DOJ, and these federal government cuts. It was just reported that yesterday, for example, the Social Security Administration, headquartered in Baltimore County, closed 2 offices this week. As a matter of fact, they closed Monday the Office of Transformation, and yesterday the Office of Civil Rights and Equal Opportunity. And this just goes along with the many cuts that we have seen this week. Misha, I'll start with you. Just overall, talk to us about just the impact of what we have seen in these thousands of cuts from the government.
Thank you, Harold. Before we even get into really the devastating impact these cuts really have on all of the employees and their families affected, but particularly African Americans, I want to take us back because we are still in Black History Month. And ASALH, the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, the creators of Black History Month, have an annual theme. And this year, the theme is African Americans in labor. And my goodness, were they prophetic. Not only because they had no idea that last summer the current president would be talking about Black jobs, but because certainly we have to know our history and what folks did to really fight for rights to work and to have the rights that all employees are owed and deserve. And so I have been editing and writing story after story about the contributions of African American laborers and labor advocates who fought for people in times such as these. And so I want to uplift the ancestors, A. Philip Randolph, Bayard Rustin, Mary McLeod Bethune, and those who did that. And so, as we say, we need that Sankofa looking back in order to move forward and say, hey, we've been here before. And unfortunately, these federal workers have a lot at stake. Not only the folks who have lost jobs and are now searching for employment and health care and food on the tables for themselves and their families, but it's also those people who are walking on eggshells every single day and don't know if they'll have a job in the next hour. And so, I really appreciate these organizations who are banding together, the Legal Defense Fund, National Urban League, and folks who are saying, hey, nah, we're not going to take this, sitting down. We're actually taking names, taking numbers, and filing lawsuits in order to make sure these federal employees have their voices heard and are their just rights.
Keith?
Yeah, also, what Misha said is right on point, but also keep in mind, especially for your listeners, that a majority of the federal workers who are being affected are African American.
Yep.
That the government provided jobs when private sector would not. When private companies, businesses would not open the doors to African Americans, the federal government did so. And we have generations upon generations who followed each other into the federal government, who built middle-class homes, put themselves and the kids through college, and on the backs of these federal jobs. And now to have this threat. And for a lot of these people, yes, a lot of jobs have been lost, but for others who are still remaining, they are living with a constant threat and a daily dose of anxiety as to what's next, as to will my job be, will I get an email tomorrow to justify my job, and what that's going to do to an already stressful work environment for a lot of people who are dealing with high blood pressure, who are dealing with physical ailments as a result. And then now you add this on. It's a very troubling time. And yes, a lot of these people are going to court or lawsuits over these job losses. But once they go to court, that's another year-long process. That's going to take a while. So in the meantime, these jobs have been put on hold or been terminated until a court decision is made. So this is going to be a very challenging time, particularly here within the DMV. And churches are trying to step up. Neighborhood associations are trying to step up. It's a very troubling time here in the DMV.
One of the things that I find really fascinating with all of this, when you look more broadly, is that Republican lawmakers are starting to feel the heat, and those who may not necessarily be in electoral danger, the senators, have been speaking up, but a lot of the members of Congress have been catching it in red states. And one of the things that has been said, well, these are Democratic or organizational plants, and you can drink that Kool-Aid if you want, Misha, but I think this is one of those find out moments for these federal legislators who are finding that even their members who voted, members of their congressional districts who voted for Donald Trump, they are feeling the heat too, because in some of these meetings that we've seen on TV, there aren't any people of color there.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there will be so many instances in the next 4 years where folks will say, oh, this is what they were warning me about. We've seen it in the first month. We saw it in the first day. And I've heard a lot of folks who were supporting the president initially using the term they feel betrayed, a sense of betrayal. But these are promises that he made.
Thank you. That's exactly right. That's exactly what I was going to say. This was his campaign. This is what he built his campaign on.
This is what he built his campaign on. And, there was a lot of reporting, I know specifically because I was editing pieces, at least in the Black press, and where we were talking to folks, congressional leaders really on both sides, again, who didn't have a lot at stake in terms of the Republicans, who were saying that this is not going to just be an issue that affects one community. It will be a nationwide issue. And because it's the nature of us being in the United States, it'll affect the world. But let's be clear, as Keith said before, no, there's not a lot of African Americans in some of these rooms, but the people who are going to feel it the most, and particularly here in the DMV, are African Americans. And it's really, really unfortunate with all the other disparities that we face. And so I think it's really, really critical that some of these conversations about what's happening also includes ways to address these coexisting issues and challenges that we've been having for years, such as healthcare, economic disparities, educational disparities.
Keith, I want to start with you on this really critical issue. Certainly, we know that the Associated Press was tossed out of its in-person coverage of the Oval Office, Air Force One, the White House, because they refuse to use the term Gulf of America. The Huffington Post has now been excluded. And what we are beginning to see over the past couple of weeks is the inclusion of right-wing and or presidentially supporting, I wouldn't even necessarily call them journalists, but certainly media outlets. You've been doing this for a really long time. My goodness, what do you make of it?
I think this is a very frightening, unprecedented time. We are seeing the White House picking and choosing who gets access to the administration based solely on the president's desire as to whether or not he likes the media outlet or not. And that's so he's basically going to shut out those media outlets who he feels are not covering him the way he wants to be covered, in a positive manner, if you will. Unprecedented. And this is a very frightening time, and not just because I'm a journalist, but as a taxpayer, as an American citizen, we all should be concerned about this. That you have somebody who is basically saying, I don't necessarily want impartiality, I want positivity in the coverage. I don't want fairness, I want you to make me look good. And that's pretty much what he is trying to do about picking and choosing. As to who's going to cover the administration. The Associated Press is trying to fight this in federal court. This is going to take a while to see what happens with this lawsuit. I mean, it is amazing now that we're now seeing all these initiatives done by the White House, and a lot of things are now ending up in the courts and in front of judges who Trump has appointed. This case in front of the Associated Press is in front of a Trump appointed judge. So it is it's a sad time, and I want to make sure your listeners and your viewers are aware that this is more than just an issue for journalists. This is an issue for you as an American citizen who is trying to get unfiltered, fair, and accurate coverage of what's going on in the largest office in America. And now we might not even have that access, basically because he can choose who he wants to cover his office. Unprecedented.
Misha, your thoughts about it?
First of all, I have to say, amen, Pastor Alexander.
Can we get a love offering?
Yeah.
Is there one? Is there one?
Is there one?
Why do you bring us three, this trio? No, but Keith, so well said. The only thing I have to add, because Keith just broke it down so beautifully, though this is a tragic situation, is that, again, we had warnings about this before. In the first administration, Donald Trump was not at all transparent, barred the press in many ways, and we started having conversations about freedom of the press in a way that I had never experienced as a journalist at the time. And so we had John McCain who was saying this is dangerous and speaking out against President Trump then in his first administration, saying, if you bar the press, you are becoming a dictator. And I mean, he was telling us straight up years ago. And so it's really unfortunate. As Keith said, it's unprecedented and it's dangerous for the American people. And again, by extension, the world, because if we cannot get information, accurate information about what's happening in the highest office of this land, how are we able to protect people with the knowledge that they deserve to know in order to operate accordingly.
We're going to hold on, Misha. I need to continue that thought on the other side. Need to take a really, really quick break. The original Quiet Storm with Raheem Devon is coming up next on WHUR. I'm Harold Fisher. This conversation continues on Sirius XM channel 141 and 96.3 HD2 in just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our conversation at the Reporters Roundtable with some of the top stories of the week. My guests are Misha Green, managing editor for the Washington Informer, and Keith Alexander, Pulitzer Prize winning DC crime and court reporter for the Washington Post. Before the break, we were talking about news agencies being excluded from White House President Trump's covering the White House. Misha, go ahead and finish your point.
Yeah, no, I was just saying we are in a place where it is really dangerous for the American people and as I said earlier, by extension, the world, simply because if we cannot get information and be able to disseminate it to the folks from the highest office in this land, it will not allow folks to be armed with the proper knowledge to operate accordingly. It's really, really dangerous. And I mean, let's think about COVID-19 and a lot of that information that we didn't have, that if we could have had it in the early stages in late 2019 and early 2020, we could have been properly armed. And so, I mean, that was a situation that unfortunately we lost so many people to. And I hope that doesn't happen to us again. But I do know that that's an example of how dangerous a lack of information can be.
And, you know, in the press, Misha knows, you know, the press, we're the watchdog, right?
Yeah.
Our job is to hold the powerful accountable.
Yeah.
That's our job. Our job is to ask those tough questions and to be a voice for the voiceless, to be a voice for, you know, men and women and people out there who can't ask the president questions. That's our job. So we'll say, you know, what you said doesn't make sense. Can you elaborate and talk a little bit more about that? And if you have somebody who doesn't want to be challenged like that, who feels that is personal, and as opposed to wanting reporters in the room who will just take whatever they say as basically put out PR pieces on their initiatives, the American people should be very concerned about that.
Yes.
And that's what he's really trying to do.
Yeah.
I do want to talk a little bit more about what we've seen over the past week as it relates to one specific media outlet, MSNBC, where Joy Reid of MSNBC fame has been let go, but there were some others that have also been let go or who are transitioning. Alex Wagner from MSNBC, she is of Asian descent. We have Jonathan Capehart, who is Black. He's also out. Lester Holt, who has announced his departure coming up late spring, you know, early summer.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, some of these things happen in an isolated way. As someone who has spent a lot of time in television, you know, I will say there are two things that are quite possibly at work here. It happens. Joy Reid's had a long run. Folks in this business get fired. Even the best, they get fired, and you can work a really, really long time, and then it's like high school. You know, you're the popular quarterback or cheerleader, 10th grade, 11th grade, and then all of a sudden that next year you're not the favorite anymore. But when you look at this in its totality, as I said, all of these people of color, and I just want your kind of take on this, Keith, because I think it would look different if Simone Sanders, Michael Steele, and and there's a third person whose name escapes me at the moment, were not replacing Joy Reid. If they were replacing Joy Reid, for example, with a white man or a white woman, it would be different. How do you see it?
I think optics do play a
Alicia
role here.
Menendez. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Alicia Menendez.
Alicia Menendez, yes.
Latina. So anyway,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yes, optics obviously are concerning here. But as you said, Harold, I mean, it's the TV business, right? People come and go in TV, sadly, all the time. What wasn't said, and I wish was said, was ratings. I would like to know what Joy's ratings have looked like over the past years. I would like for them to say, okay, this is part of the reason her ratings have gone up, down, stack, or whatever. NBC is not giving any information. Like they don't feel like they have to. They don't care. They made a decision and they're moving forward. I do think that the fact that no one is saying the ratings for certain shows have been up or down or what have you, to give us somewhat of an insight as to the decision making would help people understand better. Okay, this was a business decision. This did not come from someone outside of MSNBC, maybe in Washington, who's influencing business leaders to make these decisions. We just don't know. And MSNBC has not come forward to say, well, this is why we made the decision we made. And I think the fact that people don't have the information, they're speculating. Yeah. And the speculation is what's causing the concern and the rumors and the anger and the outcry. Yeah. But I really do think if there's information out there that MSNBC has that shows about their ratings, that would help explain a little bit, as you said, Errol, as to why these business decisions were made. But I don't think we're going to get that information.
And there has been some reporting, although no official word from MSNBC, but there had been some reporting over the past couple of years that her ratings were not the best. But again, it's an argument certainly can be made that you're still for nighttime news shows. I mean, there are only so many of those, and that you are still going to have a significant. You still are going to have a very significant audience. But that being said, Misha, there are still questions about why this decision was made now. Again, the optics.
Yeah, the optics aren't great, and certainly hard ratings would help because they would be facts to support whatever is going on, right? Or not. But I think the optics, like you said, it goes way back. We remember when Mika and Joe met with Trump and post the election, there's been a lot of conversations about why was that meeting, what was that meeting really about, but it doesn't seem like they're going anywhere. And so when you look at that, certainly the optics aren't great, but I also think that it's a very interesting time for Black journalists in particular who or journalists of color who are saying we are particularly feeling attacked right now in this time. And we also see the danger ahead and the danger ever present and ahead. And so, I find it very interesting that we're losing a voice like Lester Holt soon, sort of, who's been such a reliable source of news.
And integrity.
For so many years. But I also, again, want to shout out the many organizations and people and groups that I'm seeing standing together and holding conversations and forums, just supporting Joy Reid. I mean, losing your job in such a public way is difficult anyway. And so just feeling supported and folks saying, we've appreciated how you've delivered us news and given us information, and we're standing behind you. I think it should be a really great feeling. But yeah, we've seen this for a while. Remember Tiffany Cross, um, uh, Melissa Harris Perry shift. I mean, this is not new for MSNBC, but and so I'm really sad to see Sister Joy experiencing this, but I'm also happy to see people stand behind her and show her that
the National Association of Black Journalists met with the leadership at MSNBC and relayed their concerns. I was looking to see what came out of that meeting, and I don't see anything that came out of the meeting except for the fact that they had a meeting. Right. And there you go. That says something as well. That the only news that came out of the meeting was that they had a meeting. But it also does make you wonder if Vice President Harris would have been elected president. It makes you wonder if the landscape would have changed. MSNBC was very pro-democratic. The shows were very pro the previous administration. And now I'm wondering if this is more of a business decision that they've now got to balance the ship a little bit, if you will, to figure out how can they move forward in this new administration. And I think that probably has something to do with the decisions.
Yeah. I will say, and this is the last thing before we move on. I will say this, with, Lester Holt has been sitting in what we in TV call the big chair for 10 years. It's
been 10 years? Wow.
Yes. It's been a decade. He replaced Brian Williams in 2015. That's a long run.
Yeah.
For a main anchor, number one. Number two, Lester Holt is 65 years old. Okay. He's going to Dateline. Again, just kind of looking at the way things go in this business, particularly for network news. He may very well, I mean, I'm just guessing here, but he may, say this is a good time for me to go out on top, to ease my way out. He, like I said, a man of integrity, a journalist, no scandals. Don't forget Brian Williams was demoted because he got caught lying about a news experience, news coverage that he had participated in. And so the overall optics do not necessarily look good, but I think that in the case of Lester Holt, I would argue that he may be writing his own story and taking care and controlling his own narrative. Let us talk about someone who unfortunately is unable to control her own narrative is Karen Huger of the Real Housewives of Potomac, sentenced today to 1 year behind bars because of a drunk driving conviction. Misha, it is unfortunate, I think, for this to happen to her, but drunk driving is a serious offense, and particularly in Montgomery County, they're not playing.
Not at all. I mean, it is really concerning to know that this was a chronic issue for Karen of the Real Housewives of Potomac. What's currently trending on X is 4 DUIs in relation to her. I mean, she has stated publicly and used the Real Housewives platform to say that she is not an alcoholic, and accepted help because it was mandated, etc. But I really think that she could have used this opportunity to really talk about the dangers of what she was doing. Maybe you're not an alcoholic, but you are a chronic user of alcohol who then drives. And when we have Uber and Lyft and all of these ride services available, there is no excuse for the grande dame, as she's been so titled, to be getting behind the wheel and endangering other people's lives. It
Yeah.
is inexcusable. And
In her own life.
in her own life, in her own life. And so, she is about, I believe that she's starting her year sentence today.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll see what happens. We've seen other Real Housewives serve some time and continue to have successful careers in the franchise. And I know that she could potentially do the same because she had a great fan base. But I also know and really hope that her fans in particular and her family hold her accountable. The justice system has already done so.
Yeah.
But
Well,
Go ahead, Keith.
I think this is probably the best thing that happened to that franchise, to that show, because there are people who never heard that show, Real Housewives of Potomac, and I mean, sadly, this is good publicity for them. I had never heard this woman before seeing that video, and of her slurring and refusing the breathalyzer and saying, "Do you know who I am?" And things of that nature, and bringing in Andy Cohen's name and all of that at the time of her arrest. Yeah, I had never heard of this woman, so I think this is exactly what Bravo and Andy Cohen is going to capitalize on this for the franchise, and hopefully Karen will get some help. That's she obviously much needed.
Yeah, and again, as I said, this happened in Montgomery County. The state has Noah's Law that was named after a Montgomery County police officer who was killed by a drunk driver in 2015. It requires the interlocking ignition devices as a result of that. And as I said, and I said, Montgomery County doesn't play. No, but the state of Maryland doesn't play. And drunk driving is a very serious offense. It's a very, very serious offense. And law enforcement across the country, but let's just stick to where this happened. The Maryland State Police, state legislators, they've been saying for years, we told y'all, don't do it. Cut it out. Get help. Use Uber or some other kind of ride sharing, device. You don't have to do this. And hopefully that she will come out of this as an advocate for safer driving, clean driving, and the like. But we'll have to kind of see how that plays out.
It will be interesting to see on the future episodes when she returns, because she'll definitely return.
Oh yeah,
those little gatherings.
This would be great
alcohol
TV
in front of her.
Yeah, this will definitely be.
Yes, well, no, but also, I mean, it really comes down to whether or not they'll be drinking alcohol in front of her, around her, and just how alcohol is seen on the set with these women, because the show can really help her, or it could cause her to even fall further behind. And I those of you who watch that show, I hope that you all pay attention to that, just how alcohol is used on a set once she returns.
Yeah, I think you make a really, really good point, Keith, something I did not think about. The
Not at
very,
all.
very,
Keith,
very forward
you
thinking.
you might as well send your invoice to Bravo now because they will be taking that for a storyline. And I don't watch
I'm
the
good.
show. No,
Right.
I don't watch the show, but really, I do know about the Real Housewives franchise is that alcohol tends to be a very large part of it. You know, there's drinks thrown, and obviously a lot of gatherings around alcohol. So, really great point, Keith, and just sending her hope for help in the meantime.
Yeah. Let me talk about this upcoming economic blackout. It's supposed to happen in 2 days on Friday, February 28th. Um, a little confusion as to who is actually doing this. I've had some friends send me some announcements about what it entails, but I still don't know who's organizing it. I believe Al Sharpton said we should, but not this week. Keith, what are your thoughts about this?
Well, you would start with me because I'm just as confused as you. But I do know that in church on Sunday, I'm going to give a shout out to Ebenezer AME church. They talked about this. Apparently, the bishop talked about this at a press conference on President's Day, and they talked about the first target. Ironically enough, will be the Target store. The first source of the boycott will be the Target stores. And they talked about providing information to where customers who shop at Target can go elsewhere to buy, particularly the Black-owned products that Target had carried. They can go online and purchase these products. So I guess Target is the first store or first retailer that begins this Friday that they are boycotting. But like you, Harold, I've been getting text messages from people I haven't heard of in years. All of a sudden, they're texting me about this. And like you, I'm like, okay, there's more detail. How long was the boycott? What's next? I mean, there's multiple stores out there. Why is Target the first? I still don't understand why that is, but this seems to be a very organized effort within the Black community to basically make their voices heard.
Yeah, it makes me wonder, Misha, whether or not that is going to have an impact. I keep going all the way back to the Million Man March back in 1990s, where, of course, Black men did not go to work. They either stayed home or went to DC. I was a TV reporter in Columbus, Ohio. I did not work that day. I stayed home. I know the city kind of have shut down and there were other cities that were more impacted. But do you think that something like this is really going to work, or is it more symbolic?
I think it's a bit of both. I think the hope is that it works, but certainly I think that people are grabbing at the tools and resources that we've had before and hoping that something shakes. I do know that I believe the People's Union is the organization that is organizing this blackout on February 28th. And that, social media has really been the key in getting their effort out there. But as you all have said, I've also received 40 text messages with different lists and different colors and different organizations telling me where to boycott. And what I do know is that at least folks are talking about it. People are aware, and it's causing at least some conversation in the Black community, which might mean some action. We know that our dollars are very valuable to corporations and certainly Target. I do know that Pastor Jamal Bryant is encouraging a 40-day Lenten fast of Target. And so, of course, Lent is the 40 days, is the season for the 40 days and 40 nights leading to Easter.
Come on, Deaconess.
Yeah, you
Deaconess
know,
Green.
look, well, we have been in church today.
Today.
No.
Preach it, Sister Green.
Is there another one? Yes.
Is there? Obviously, there is. Come on, I'll walk down with you. So, yeah, I think you do. We'll have to see what happens in the days after Friday. I did in these last 3 minutes wanted to kind of give you the floor, Misha, because we need to talk about the 60th anniversary of the Washington Informer. What you're working on, the celebration. I'll let you kind of wrap up this Reporters Roundtable discussion. Go right ahead, please.
So, yes, we are celebrating the 60th anniversary of the Washington Informer, which has been fearlessly telling news that everyone can use about the African American community, not only in the DMV region, but really nationwide. And so this is a huge celebration. Our theme is legacy, culture, and vision. Our fearless publisher, Denise Rolark Barnes, took the mantle after her father, who really had a strong vision for the Washington Informer, and she has so beautifully and boldly continued his mission. And so we are celebrating Dr. Rolark's original vision, as well as the work that we continue to do. There's a lot of amazing, exciting things happening, but we're honoring 6 Black business owners here in the district who have also been truly legacy organizations here. And so we are going to be celebrating them and the wonderful work that they've been doing and the contributions they've had to the district. And it'll be
Can you share like one or two of who these 6 are?
Absolutely.
Or is it a surprise?
No, I absolutely can. I don't want to leave anybody out, so I'm gonna pull out my list.
Go ahead, because you got a minute. Go ahead.
But yeah, we have Lee's Flower Shop. We have Ben's Chili Bowl.
Yes.
We have Chuck Levins. We have Stefan Lockridge, who, the Lockridge family has done so much here in the district, but we're actually honoring him for his work at KIP. We have Cheryl Lofton of Lofton Tailors, as you all know, who have been doing great stuff, and Industrial Bank. I don't think I forgot anybody. I think that was all 6.
That's a blackety black list.
It really is.
That's a blackety black list.
MLK Library, you all.
Oh, nice.
The Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Library on March 28th. It's a Friday evening affair. And this is the last week to get early bird tickets. So go on win60.com. I believe it's win60legacy.com, and make sure you get, win60legacy.com, and get your tickets. You do not want to miss this celebration. It's going to be fabulous. And as Harold said, blackety black.
There you go. Keith Alexander, Misha Green, thank you so much. Misha, congratulations to the Washington Informer. We're going to try to have Denise on next week as well. Thank you all so much. That is the Daily Drum for this Wednesday, February 26th. I'm Harold Fisher. Good night.